Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Star.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to All You Serve's 2011 webinar series. Glad you were able to join us today. I'd like to welcome everyone to the All You Serve webinar on Are Your Foods Hot and Cold? We are Keith McCrae, our National Sales Manager, will be presenting, Tony Yenzer, our General Manager, and myself, Marcia Diamond. Some housekeeping tips. If you have any questions, please insert your questions on the bottom, type your message, and send it to us. We will try to answer the questions towards the end of the program. Otherwise, we will get back to you with those answers. Also, you can follow us at All You Serve at twitter.com, or you can follow us on our blog, on our website, and get more information on food safety and other resources. So here we are. Are your foods hot and cold? A question that's pretty evident today. The last 3 months, I saw nothing but lots of food safety questions, some food safety legislation that's coming out. Okay. Today, you're going to learn about more about critical temperature zones. Do you know or are you aware of your critical temperature zones? Are you aware of strategies on how to maximize your holding food temperatures? Some things are more obvious than others, and so today we're going to give you some, make you more aware of it so that you can keep your foods hot that are supposed to be hot and foods cold that are supposed to be cold. And we are going to enable you to be able to elevate your food safety, your food quality, and your patient satisfaction in your operations, in your retail, in your meal delivery, and in your catering operations by incorporating some of these strategies and really making you more aware of some of the food safety challenges that are out there. Keith?
Good morning. This is Keith McCrae. Thanks, Marcia. I'm the National Sales Manager for All You Serve. I'd like to welcome everyone this morning to our All You Serve webinar. As Marcia said, today we're going to be offering you some helpful tips on how to keep your hot food hot and your cold food cold. Everyone is aware of HACCP. Marcia, if you go to the next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
The next couple of slides deal with temperature guidelines offered by the Federal Food and Drug Administration. And like I said, everybody is aware of HACCP. You know, these hazardous foods which favor bacterial growth include meat, poultry, eggs, seafood, dairy products, cut melon, raw seed sprouts, garlic and oil mixtures, cooked rice, and potatoes. It's very important, if you go to the next one, Marcia, that upon receiving these products, it's recommended that you check their temperature. And, you know, it's very important that product coming in is in that safe zone. And for refrigerated products, you're looking at 41 degrees or below. And for frozen products, you're talking about 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Upon receiving these products, it's recommended that you check these temps and reject any items that fall outside the acceptable ranges. On the storage side of things, you know, we can just review here quickly some of the temps. Air temperature in refrigeration, we're talking 38 degrees Fahrenheit or below. Refrigerated food should be 41 degrees or below. Seafood, to be in that safe zone, need to be between 30 and 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Fresh produce, 41 to 45 degrees. And the deep chill is anywhere from 26 degrees Fahrenheit to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Frozen items, you're talking about 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below. And then dry storage, you're talking, you know, 50 to 7 degrees, just ambient temperatures. Next slide, please, Marcia. Why is measuring the temperature of food important? Because microorganisms that can cause foodborne illness grow best on foods in the temperature danger zone. The temperature danger zone includes the temperatures between 45 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit on the food thermometer. Food should be in this temperature range for no more than a total of 4 hours. Next slide, please, Marcia. I just want to give you a simple little tip on the next slide as far as, it's so important that we're taking these temperatures, and it's also important that your thermometer is calibrated correctly as well. Here's just a little simple test to make sure your thermometer is accurate. Stick the sensing tip or the stem into a clean styrofoam or glass cup that contains half ice and half water. Make sure that the tip does not touch the side or the bottom of the cup. Wait 4 or 5 minutes or until the needle is steady. Temperature should read 32 degrees Fahrenheit. If the thermometer has a calibration nut near the dial and the dial does not read 32 degrees Fahrenheit, turn the nut until the needle is on 32. Less expensive thermometers do not have these calibration nuts. If the dial is reading more than 5 degrees or above or below 32 degrees, you should replace the thermometer. If the dial is reading between 1 and 5 degrees or below 30 degrees, write the amount down and remember to add or subtract that amount when you're reading the thermometer. Or if you think you may forget to do this, buy a new thermometer. And it's imperative that everything's being accurately tested.
Also, today there are some infrared thermometers that people may want to be aware of. And the infrared thermometers you don't have to immerse, but you actually can hold above it. They're a little bit more costly, but again, calibration is important to make sure that those infrareds are tested. And those infrareds seem to be really good when it comes to food temperatures rather than immerse into a food item on a tray. So to calibrate from the point of service or not.
Next slide, please, Marshall. Everyone is aware of what the proper temperatures are supposed to be, but let's take a minute here real quick and review what those are. For egg and egg dishes, we're talking 160 degrees. That's pretty widely known. Chicken and turkey products, 165. Beef, veal, lamb, pork, 160. As far as fresh beef, veal, and lamb, here are the temps as far as, a minimum of 145 and a maximum for 170 for well done. Fresh pork is a little bit higher at 160, 170 for well done. Ham products, 160. Fully cooked needs to be brought back to 140 degrees. Roast beef, you're talking 140 degrees as well. Poultry products, just basic rule of thumb is 165 degrees. Soups and gravies and marinades, they must be brought to a boil, which is the safe zone. And then seafood, we're talking 145 degrees. And leftovers, of which hopefully you don't have a whole lot, we're talking 165 degrees as far as temperatures. So, like I said, most everybody is aware of what these temperatures should be. The question is, how do we maintain those temps? Go to the next slide, please, Marcia. On this slide, you can see a couple of ways of keeping your food hot. Obviously, you're going to have a system for keeping that hot. And looking at this sheet, you see the wax base is the #1 item up there. This base gets up to 212 degrees and can hold for up to an hour and a half of holding time. As far as we think we've come with all these systems, the basic old wax stainless steel pellet still does one of the best jobs in regard to keeping food hot. One of the problems in the past, everybody always complained about the band around the top of it and burning patients' wrists and things like that. But we've evolved to a point where we've eliminated that band, and it sits so deep in the underliner now that there's no risk of burning yourself on those hot wax bases. But that's a great system, and it's something that gets overlooked quite a bit. But I'm actually seeing a resurgence going back to some of the old ways because they did such a wonderful job keeping hot food hot. The other system that's used quite widely out there, too, is the induction system. And this system gets up to 175 degrees and can hold temps from 45 minutes to an hour. But to accomplish that, you've got to have a real tight operation, and everything has to be done just right to receive those kind of times. A couple of other products that are very important in regards to your tray line makeup is a convective plate heater. This one actually moves cyclonic air around inside the cavity, and that way you get nice, even plate temperatures up to 170 degrees inside there. The other system is a radiant plate heater, which gets up to about 140. But the problem with the radiant is that it's it just relies on basic physics. It just relies on the fact that hot air rises. It's heated at the base, and the heat just rises through the column of plates, and the plates at the top tend to be a little bit cooler than the plates at the bottom. But no matter what kind of system you're using, it's imperative that you heat your plates. I can't stress how important that is. I see it out there every day. You know, people take an ambient plate it with hot food, and they're questioning why they're having hot food problems. The first thing that happens, you take an ambient plate and plate hot food on it, they're going to equalize in temperature almost immediately. That room temperature plate is going to suck all the heat out of the food, and now you've got a hot food problem. So it's very, very important that you start with a very hot plate, and this is a way to accomplish it. I highly recommend the convection plate heater for heating plates. Next slide, please, Marcia. You know, we've addressed the hot food side. The cold food side is just as important. And there's a couple of products here that will help you maintain those temperatures. On the right side, you can see an air curtain. An air curtain can be pulled up to your tray line for the most efficient tray makeup operation. The air curtain operates with the door open for up to 90 minutes below 41 degrees Fahrenheit. The airflow flows from side to side as well as front to back with our unit for superior cooling. This air curtain is more efficient, more compact, and holds temperatures better than any other of the open cold wells on some of your lines. On-demand defrost cycle allows for defrost at your convenience. I can't stress how important these products are for your cold side of your tray makeup. Everything's mobile. Everything's on casters. You know, they can be loaded somewhere else and then moved to the tray line before it starts. On the air curtain, it's very important that every level is full and that it's full of cold product. It's not a refrigerator. It's not made to draw down the temperatures in ambient product. So you have to load it with cold product, and you've got to give it a couple of hours for that product to maintain the 41 degrees inside it. The other product there is a drop-down side milk cooler, and once again, it's you're able to push that up to your line, and it's going to hold product, you know, around 40 to 41 degrees. And it's so important that these items are kept cool until the tray line starts. Next slide, please, Marcia. In your hot food counters, this is another area where a lot of people have problems. It's very important when you start your tray line that all your wells have water in them and that you've got to boil before you start adding product. Once you drop your steam table pans in, it's important that that steam has been building inside there to help keep the product hot while your tray line is running. Just a couple of helpful hints. Most of the time, it's either got a stainless steel cover on it. If that's what you're currently using, I would recommend a hinged cover, so when you open it, you're still half covered. And if you're using foil on these products too, instead of pulling the foil out before the tray line starts, I'd recommend just rolling it and rolling it back and leaving it covered. And another good thing is when you're scooping, because that steam is hitting the bottom of the pan first, it's very important when you're scooping product out of there to scoop all the way from the bottom of the pan and keep stirring the product too during the tray line to make sure that you're getting consistent steam table pan temperatures. Another thing in regard to that too is, you know, you can run them dry, but I don't recommend running them dry. You're going to be scorching product on the bottom of your steam table pans, and you're going to get a lot better heat distribution if you've got steam being produced from your hot well. On your tray line makeup, you know, the average in most facilities is about 3 or 4 trays per minute. I think it's important that you're aware of how long it takes you to get those products down your tray line. And it's very, very important that as soon as you can, you get them covered with an insulated dome cover as well. It's amazing how many facilities that I see where they're running their tray line and they'll stop because they're missing something, and in the meantime, those plated meals are sitting there on the tray and you're losing that big head of steam. So it's imperative that when it's coming down the line, you get it covered with an insulated dome cover just as soon as possible so you can encapsulate the meal and save as much of that heat as possible. That's really important. Next slide, please. This is a typical tray, a delivery cart full of product. And once again, once you get that thing loaded, you're going to be creating quite a bit of heat within there. So once again, it's imperative that the cold items are very cold. And once the cart is full, it should be going to the wings or the pod and delivered as soon as possible, because the longer that product sits on the cart, the more your cold food starts to deteriorate and starts rising in temperature. These carts, most of them are ventilated. The whole idea with a cart is to let that heat be released from inside the cavity, because if you let that heat build up like in an insulated cart, all of a sudden now you have major cold food problems as well. So it's very important that there's air movement around inside these carts, and you let that hot air escape. Next slide, please, Marcia. This is a wonderful item. This solves all your problems out there. This cart allows delivery of both hot and cold food products in one unit. It will maintain safe food temperatures for up to 30 minutes without a power source for safe floor delivery. When plugged into a power source, the cart can hold hot and cold products for as long as required. It is both NSF and UL listed. That's very important to know, because there's some products out there on the marketplace that are not NSF, and this particular product is certainly NSF approved as well as UL. It will also accommodate 15 by 20 trays, 14 by 18, and room service trays. Currently, it holds 10 trays, but if you're willing to go to a 10 by 15 tray, we can actually double up and get 20 trays inside this, which doubles the capacity. The chilled compartment, it stays between 34 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the heated compartment maintains a maximum temperature of up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This cart can also be reconfigured for bulk as well. You can get your steam table pans in there in a different configuration. We can go hot on one side, hot on the other. We can go hot on one side and cold on the other side, or we can go cold, cold. And this is great if you've got pods or pantries or just hot storage for bringing product to your tray line. This is a great item because, like I said, once it's plugged in, it'll hold temperatures indefinitely, basically, until the food starts to deteriorate. The other thing to remember, too, it's a little bit different from some of the other split carts out there. You get a hot makeup on the right side, and it's a cold pantry on the left side. And this you can put full-size sheet pans in, and pre-plated pastas or pre-plated salads, your milks, your juices, everything remains on that side. And when you're delivering the trays, you marry the two together and take the cold items you need from the pantry side on the left and add them to your tray before you deliver it. So that's a great piece of equipment for maintaining proper temperatures and staying in that safe zone.
Before we get to this point, Tony, could you add a few things from your perspective before we get to this point?
No, just the latest thing that he just added there. The hot food temperatures, people do have problems with that, and once again, he's hit on it. The plate temperature is critical right off the bat. I mean, especially on the induction systems, if you don't have that 170-degree plate, you're not going to be getting that 45-minute hold time. A little bit different with the wax-based system since it gets up to the 212 degrees, that you can use a little bit less heated plate, but still the convection plate heater actually, the whole plate is, every plate in there is saturated with the air, hot air going around it. So that's where it's really critical, and like Keith was stating before, there's just a ring heater on the bottom of the Radiant one, and so that ring heater heats up the first plates, and then it just saturates through as it goes down, as it goes up. But that is critical, and so once you can resolve your hot issue, hot product issues, then what's really becoming noted here lately is the cold. And that's one critical thing, especially if you're having pastas and any type of slaws and stuff like that, where you definitely want to keep that product down to that 40, 41 degree temperature at the max. So that latest product they had there, and that was critical, where the cold side actually can handle 12 by 20 or 18 by 26 sheet pans. So now you can pre-plate and have everything ready for the tray line to really speed up your tray line as opposed to dishing out, and you have better control of your proportions of food as well. So it's actually a cost saver in that particular aspect. So I think he covered it very well, and like I said, what we're trying to do here is to reiterate the importance of having cold food cold and hot food hot, and we can move on from there.
Oops, sorry, gotta get. Okay. A question came before you. A question for you, Keith. The question was, when it comes to keeping my food cold, hot, are there any other parameters or any other types of tools that I should have on my tray line?
Well, if I could reiterate that the items that we highlighted in this presentation do a wonderful job keeping your cold products cold, as far as the air curtain refrigerator and the drop-down milk coolers. Hot side, it's very important that you get those plates out. I can't say that enough, that a hot plate is a big part of having a higher patient satisfaction, and it's imperative that you keep those plates at least to 170 degrees, and those convective plate heaters do a wonderful job doing that. So it's a matter of having the right equipment to maintain, those hot and cold temperatures.
Okay. And another question that came, was there. Give me a second. The question was, here it is. The question is, where do you get the refrigeration temperature guidelines? What literature source did you use?
Well, I'll have to defer to Tony on that one.
That was off the website, and I'll track it down, and if we can put these questions in a format that we can put on our website for everybody to go back, and I'll put the resources down that we grab these off of.
Okay. So where the PowerPoint will be posted on the website, at that point we'll put some of these links. We'll add these links onto the end of the PowerPoint, so you'll have all the links where we got the resources and some additional resources for food safety. If you go on the All You Serve website as well, under the news section, you'll see food safety RSS feeds on it. And we keep the RSS feeds on any food. And also on our Twitter, we kind of combine some of that. So those kind of components. But we'll get you that resource on there. Good question on that. Another question is, we've answered the question. Let me get that question. One second, Lorena. I'm going to actually unmute. Let's, give me a second. Let's see, Loretta. Okay. Lorena has a question, and her question is, apologize for that. I'm trying to pull up a question. Well, I have another question while I'm pulling that up. Another question was, you spoke about leftovers and temperatures. Are those temperatures what it should be upon getting to the patient, or is that what at the starting point?
Those are critical temperatures. That the product has to be elevated to 165 before it's plated. So it's for your, it's a pre-plated temperature. It's great if you can maintain that temperature to the patient. That's desirable, but you know how that works. Sometimes, depending on timing, sometimes it's hot and sometimes it's not. And like I said, all this stuff directly relates to your patient satisfaction and a lot of your satisfaction scores out there as well. So.
Okay. Lorena, if you can post your question again, somehow so if you can post it again, we'll actually answer that question. And Keith, if you want to summarize, bring you back
Yeah,
to the call.
To summarize, reevaluation of your delivery point time. It's very important to know how long it takes a product to get down your tray line before you get it covered. These are the things we were talking about during the webinar. It's so vital that you get that product encapsulated with an insulated dome cover on top of it, because the quicker you can get that dome on there, the more temperature you're going to capture under that lid. And you won't know that unless you know how much time it takes for your products to get down your tray line. So it's important, and everybody on the tray line understands what their job is, and that refers to the training aspect of this. And everybody has to be, of the same mindset that time is of the essence, and they need to keep it moving, and they need to keep the product, in that encapsulated form as soon as possible. Equipment plays a huge role, as we talked about today. Having the right products to keep it cold and to keep it hot helps you deliver a more satisfying meal to your patients, and obviously, it's going to be reflected in your Press Ganey scores. Proper working equipment, too. If you've got old steam tables that aren't getting up to and your water's not boiling in them, then that's a critical point. You need to take a look at that and possibly think about replacing those steam tables at this point in time. And on the cold side, too, an air curtain, if it's not holding, below 41 degrees, then you've got a problem there as well. And, some of these new products do such a better job maintaining these temperatures that if it's an old piece of equipment, you might want to consider replacing it. And the other issue is the thermometers, too. It's very important that you have an accurate thermometer that's working properly, and, you can review those steps that we talked about earlier. And having the NSF approval, such as on the multi-temp cart, is important too. We've run into problems in certain areas of the country where there's sticklers about that NSF approval, and if you're looking at a product that hasn't got that approval, you're gonna run into some problems down the road. So that's all I've got, and I want to thank everyone for attending.
We've got a few more questions. Keith, we've got a few more questions, and I'm pulling them. Trying to pull them up. Tony, I don't know if you have a better way of getting the questions. Give me a second here.
Always good is to list these questions out so we give us a little time to give an accurate answer, and that everyone can go back and see what the answer actually would be.
Okay. We've got a lot of questions here. What I would do is, everyone, if you send me the questions, we will, let me just pull up, give me a second. I'm looking. Okay, I'm getting, another question is about types of thermometers. Do you prefer infrared or typical traditional regular thermometers? Is there any literature out there?
I'm more of a fan for the old traditional thermometers, because I think they're a little more accurate than some of the infrared thermometers out there. It's amazing how many variants there are on some of the infrared products, but that's just my personal opinion. It's whatever works for you, but the most important thing is that you are taking these critical temperatures along the line in your tray line.
Especially infrareds, if you're going to be doing anything like your water into your well, if you actually want to see what it is because it's not boiling. Infrareds tend to reflect off stainless, so you're not getting as accurate as a reading as you would with the regular one. Plus, they're much more expensive, as you stated earlier, Marcia.
Okay. And one of the other questions was, which refrigeration, why would you go, you mentioned about the air curtains, why would you go vertical versus horizontal, and what are the advantages of this type that you've shown versus the other ones that are out there?
The nice thing about go ahead, Tony, I'm sorry.
I was going to say the air curtain, number one, going vertical takes up less floor space. That's number one in the issue. It also gives you the opportunity to do your pre-plated salads, your pre-plated other dishes, whereas you see the drop front milk cooler is basically designed for either your milk or juices in that. There are also the opportunity to put in a cold food well, but once again, the the actual air temperature maintained in an air curtain refrigerator is much more superior than any of the other products that you have out there. And once I brought it up a little bit earlier too, portion control, that is another key issue with a lot of hospitals there, that you want to give accurate proportions of the salads, the pastas, and stuff like that. This allows you to pre-plate all this ahead of time, as opposed to running it down there. Adding to Keith's comment about how long things takes to go down the tray line before it's covered. So.
And what's the sources for temperature? Is there a reference site of temperatures that we should have on tray line for hot foods and cold foods separately to ensure, I'll repeat it, that the food temperatures would be at the right temperature when the patient receives it? Example, temperature of milk on tray line. I'm going to repeat this slowly again. The question is there a reference set of temperatures that we should have on tray line for hot foods and cold foods separately to ensure that the food temperatures would be at the right temperature when the patient receives it? For example, temperature of milk on tray line that's less than or equal to 35 degrees Fahrenheit, so that when the patient receives it, it will be at least 40 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit.
No, I think we have to go back and reference the critical temperature zones that we're talking about. When you bring something out of an air curtain refrigerator, typically it's going to be at that 40, 41 degree temperature range. Even though the air temperature inside, as we showed on there earlier, is could be 38 degrees, the actual product temperature is going to be around at 40, 41. So we want to be able to make sure the cold food product gets there before it hits that 45 degree temperature for any amount of time. Hot food temperature, same way. We don't want it to get down to that critical temperature mass for any amount of time. And it's just like anything else. If you get a nice cold cup of milk, in my opinion, that's the best thing in the world versus something that's just, halfway cold. So the critical temperatures are basically that danger zone temperatures that we were talking about prior. I hope that answered the question.
And then we will put some resources where we got this information so you have it. Another question, any tips for room service operations on keeping foods hotter and colder? Any timing issues? I'll repeat the question. Any tips for room service operations on keeping foods hot and cold? Any timing issues that we should be aware of?
In a typical room service type setup, once that product is plated, it usually gets into a smaller cart, usually talking like a 10 capacity cart. And when that's full, it's very important that it takes off from the kitchen and heads to the floors and the wings. Time is of the essence, and once again with the plate itself, you need a hot plate. You need some kind of heat source, hopefully underneath that plate, and you need to have it encapsulated with an insulated dome as well. And on the cold side, if you're pulling product right before you run it to the flames, you should be able to maintain your cold products as well. Should be the last thing that goes on the tray before it leaves the kitchen.
Another tip for room service operation and keeping hot foods cold is that the food should be when it's prepared, it shouldn't be held on top of the holding area for very long. So as the food comes up, it should be either put into an induction plate or into one of the pellets, and then dome covered. Reassess how long it's hanging out on top under a heat lamp versus being put on a tray. Reassess that timing because, again, the longest you should have that tray line, you should minimize it less than 15 minutes. That holds start from the person cooking it till it gets into a cart. And again, remember that work from the end back. That window, if you have a 30-minute window to get the food temperatures drop, then you have to look at your timing on how long it takes someone to cook it, put it on a plate, from the plate to the tray to the dome. So like he said, look at that components of it. Another question, assisted livings, they don't use a pellet system. What is the temperature of a plate to be handled safely with gloved hands?
With a convective plate lowerator, you're going to get to 170 and probably 170 plus, depending on how long it, was filled and plugged in before the tray line ran. I stress this during the webinar. It's the hotter the plate, the better off you're going to be as far as serving hot food. By the time it gets in front of your patient, there should be sufficient enough time where there shouldn't be an issue as far as a burn issue at all. By then,
how about the question is about employees?
Employees. Well, as long as they're gloved, it shouldn't really matter. As long as they're using the safety precautions, and that's true of any system. You either have to use gloves or a suction cup, to move these products. You certainly don't want to be touching them with your bare hand. So gloves are a nice way to do it where you're still able to work. And, the nice thing about pellet lifters and plate lifters as well is that you don't have to wear the gloves, and you can still have, the ability to pull those hot plates out without actually having to wear gloves. Because sometimes people are uncomfortable with gloves and they're on and off for them all the time.
Question. A comment was made about thermometers, so thank you for sharing that. Thermometers. Somebody said digitals are really the way to go. Infrareds only reach surface temperatures. Foods must be probed for core temperature. Digital is faster and more accurate than dial thermometers. And so that's a very good point. Thank you. Another question. We have a cold setup tray line and Transtronic carts for heating and delivering. Any suggestions for making better temperatures? Again, we have a cold setup for tray line. This is for you, Tony. We have a cold setup for tray line and Transtronic carts for heating. Any
a bit more work on the Transtronics carts to be able to answer that accurately.
Okay. It must be a retherm setup.
Sure. Yeah, I realize that. Knowing which one it is.
Okay. In the situation there is that for better temperatures, if you're talking about heating temperatures, then it has to be certainly with the retherm systems. If you're talking about in the tray line, things like air curtains will allow your foods to be colder so you can hold the cold foods at a better temperatures. But as far as the retherm, there are the challenges with that, and you would need to go to those people that are involved with those kind of components on that.
Well, the retherm products also have the ability to cold chill on the other side. So that's why I say knowing what system they're using, number one. And that is just kind of difficult because you'll have hot products on one side of the tray and cold products on another side of the tray, too, on certain ones. So
one question is, how do they train people on, again, you had a summary. It was saying here, they were asking, the question was, let me go back. Going back. The question was, right from this one, bear with me. Sorry about that. The question was, you had on the it said on the summary page, so let me go to the summary page. They said that you said about training. Any suggestions on how to make people aware of how to use the equipment properly so that you have a correct use of the type of equipment, whether it's air curtains or whether it's the multi-cart? How do we train people to make sure the food is safe?
Well, one thing I like always doing, Marcia, is, particularly if you have turnover in your employees, is to take a tray that's been assembled and follow along with it to the end of the tray line and record the temperatures, and for the new people there to see how the process works and what the final result is after the patient gets it, so they better understand the criticalness of the timeliness, the proper working of the tray line, and the speediness of the delivery and everything else. So it's always good to do this once a month just to check your staff and see that they're following the guidelines that have been trained.
And so as far as that delivery, and also very important on probably a quarterly basis, reevaluate your delivery touch points. Have the people, your air curtain vendor, your multi-temperature vendors, your cart, have them come in and help you do that evaluation. Have a strategic partner so that you can see how you can minimize time in the kitchen and maximize the time that the trays are spending in front of the patient. A comment made, a suggestion made by one of the people that are listening is that someone mentioned about gloves. Someone mentioned to handle gloves, they use reusable generic cotton gloves under a latex disposable gloves to handle their hot plates on their tray line so that it's comfortable for everybody. I'll repeat that again. Someone said they use reusable generic cotton gloves under a latex disposable glove to handle the hot plates so that it's comfortable and it wears well. Thank you for that suggestion. Great idea. Great idea of sharing. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we thank you. Any other questions, please forward to marciadiamond@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter. You will see some follow-up comments from this feedback, and we would be more than happy to help you look at some, evaluate any of your needs, and be offer any equipment solutions. Next month, stay tuned for next month's webinar, which will be on retail food service interior design, and we have a panelist of interior designs with retail joining us. Any suggestions for future webinars, please email them to me at marciadiamond@gmail.com. We'd love to hear them, and hopefully you found value out of this webinar today. Thank you for joining us, and the webinar will be posted within the next 3 days with certificates for CEU credit as well as the resources. Thank you. Have a great day.